thicknesses and edge bandings and all the kinds of things that go into being able to accurately determine all the bills, bombs, cut list, machining, that kind of stuff is very unique. And what I saw from all of the ERP systems, and it's been quite a few that we've worked with over the years, both systems that we've marketed, but also, you know, when our customers have a need to connect to something they have, we also often get involved in. And what I've seen with 100% of them is this. They have their own configurator, so that realistically what it means is that the ERP system already has to have existing within it these things that we're going to do. And a lot of our customers have such a, you know, a custom nature that there's no way that you could properly configure all the possible build constructs or even job specifications and or have a library of everything you need to do. So our philosophy is this, and I think it'll come out clearly today, if nothing else, is that ultimately if a company wants to be able to deploy ERP in the most effective way, we have to determine what is kind of the single source of truth. Where is the data that we want to use? And I believe with you guys already having WCAG CAM, it makes a lot of sense to consider that to be the single source of truth, so that then you could extend its use both forward and backwards. Roger asked me today to show you guys a little bit about on-screen takeoff, so I prepared just to do a real light overview of it and how that can work with WCAG CAM, and then how we can extend that out. And we can come back to on-screen or any of these and do a deeper kind of a view of it if you'd like. Since you are viewing my screen, you might see that I'm in the on-screen takeoff interface for the bids tab, and so it just shows the number of bids that I have going on. If you want, you can click on the image tab, and this takes you to be able to see the PDF files that you can quickly import and convert to TIFF files. You can sort through these to be looking at any of the available pages within them. This isn't a real big job, but I have a little bit of work done within this, and so I think that we can just do some clicks and see how all of this works. So we basically have a library of items. These happen to match the names of the articles within WCAG CAM, so we're able to make an output file, convert it to XML, and import ultimately into WCAG CAM. But just to show you, what this is really doing is giving you a quantitative evaluation of all of the conditions that you would have in a project. And so I'm going to set this and tell this that I want to be working in one of the phases, which we're going to call layout 1 in this case, and I'm going to go select on an object and tell this that I want to be able to deploy it. Literally, it's just clicking it and click, 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 you know, whatever you want to do to be able to count the number of different objects that you have within this. We can turn on all areas to be able to see that we can assign conditions to various portions of it. If we go and look at another view, we can see also that, for example, if we zoomed in here to the plan view, we've taken off some countertops in a lineal fashion from the plan, because that makes sense. We've also built into it hot links. So, for example, if you wanted to see what was taken off in this, you now have the display of what was taken off in the elevation or reverse of that. Ultimately, what you get from this is a list and a count of all of the objects that you did for takeoff. Our customers tell us that on average they can take off or estimate 3 to 4 times the amount of work compared to using scales and markers and that kind of stuff to be able to do takeoff. Does that make sense?
I believe so.
Awesome. So that's, I mean, there's like so much. We can either dive deeper into this, or we can take the concept of how we roll forward into WCAG CAM, whichever you want to do.
Hey, I have a quick question. This is Jason.
Yes, sir.
So based on what you just showed, if I had a convenience store footprint, right, an elevation, and I were to take, you know, a fountain area, a coffee area, a POS area, you know, it's a little bit different than the architects, but certainly we still have the same. I come from that side of the industry. Could you do the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Think of this as a construction software. So whether you wanted to take off cabinets, countertops, moldings, or you want to calculate sheetrock, roof pitches, literally anything that you want to get a quantitative takeoff for, you can. In the concept of what I wanted to show you today, it was that if we're taking off objects that match the articles that we have in WoodCAD CAM, then we can connect the two systems. So this software is not doing any calculations for dollar values, the commercial side of it. It is purely doing the counting for you, and then utilizing WoodCAD CAM to import, to use the calculations manager of WoodCAD CAM, which is unparalleled to anything I've ever seen in the industry, and to be able to generate the customer proposals while at the same time already giving you all of the cut list, BOM, and all that information right out of the way. One of the things that has changed in our industry some that I suspect that you guys would agree with is it used to be that we'd get a job and then we'd engineer it all up. We'd do submittals, red lines for if you're doing that kind of bid work, and then we'd have a project out here and we'd have plenty of time to order our materials and all this stuff. Today, there's so many dadgum exotic laminates and different kind of stuff with long lead times, and everything is special, and the the lead times that we have to be able to do this stuff is so short that I have customers that are literally saying, how can I start ordering materials before I even engineer? Does that make sense?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, so that's what we're giving you is when this comes into WoodCAD CAM, it's just like you engineered it. There's no drawings for it. Well, technically, we can even go further than that, but no drawings, but everything else for data. So, and I don't mind to go back and show you anything that you want to see on the WoodCAD CAM side, but I'm just going to go to the import side of this and grab a project just to give you as an example. We could, of course, look into any one of these and see what's available in it, but if we're working now at a project level, which I believe is a concept more for version 12 and how we're doing things, and we went to some form of a report. Of course, this is using now in version 12 Microsoft reporting services for all of this, so you can make them however you want. But if you'll notice, I'll blow this up a little bit, one of these orders, so it would bring in a project folder, and for whatever different areas that you had in on-screen, it would create a separate order in WoodCAD CAM. So in this case, there's layout 1. Here's the material calculations that it's done. Here are the edge banding quantities. Here are all the hardware, the color principles I think you know about. And so here's layout 2, so the second order and what's involved in these. And then we also, utilizing the calculations manager, are calculating the routings as well as the time and capacity. So now, if we think about what this is, and we had a ERP system that could actually handle this, not only could we purchase and receive and allocate and check out, but we could actually pass along all of the information that's technically required to be able to schedule and plan work to the shop floor, because we know this system has the ability to calculate precisely the amount of time that it takes to be able to do these things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Even though this was technically used for estimation, when we get something that gets converted, we call that a sales order, and a sales order still has to get scheduled, so we still need time. And if we have this in the system, then when we actually engineer the project, we now have in the ERP system, if it works the way that we have it planned, you now have a true actual versus estimate. So you would be able to report on exactly what it is that was done from the takeoff and estimation side compared to what happened from the engineered compared to the actual time on the floor. So now we can improve the way we estimate. We can be more efficient at doing things and have great ways to be able to compare, in the process of jobs, not just waiting for the end of a financial period where everything is lumped together. We could actually see it on an order-by-order basis. So the concept, of course, is, I'm restating the same thing I'm told by different people, sometimes that can be a good thing because it is the new concept. We are utilizing the WCAG CAM SQL database to provide all the calculations necessary for everything from estimation, engineering, and all the data downstream for ERP functions, MRP, MES, and then the scheduling, capacity planning, those kind of things. So what ERP ultimately becomes is an integrated accounting system, AR, AP, general ledger, and the management of things like vendors and contacts and CRM kind of function. Other than that, there's really nothing that has to be set up. And the beauty of this is not only do half of all ERP systems fail, but they also generally take a long time. I've been involved in projects that have been 3-year projects. With this kind of a strategy, if you have your WCAG CAM set up doing properly, your engineering, and it's pulled forward because you have calculations manager set up correctly, you should be able to deploy an ERP system in less than 6 months. And that's a really unusual thing, and I think a really big deal for our industry.
But isn't the ERP system also going to be reporting and utilizing this information to show us the scheduling and the whole? Okay.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So it's more than just the accounting side of it. There is some of the whole production side of it that it's going to be handling.
Yeah, so what it's going to do is these time values and these routings, the steps, the operations, all that kind of stuff, if it's fed that stuff, now it can calculate for your factory based on what's capable of your factory doing. It can now take that time and to be able to allow you to put that time into a calendar. These kind of different methodologies for doing it, but the big thing that I wanted you to get is that the hours, the time, is being calculated from the engineering data of WCAG CAM. So what that in essence means is that I don't have to have a product in my ERP system called the two-door base cabinet, and I put in all this information about how its bill of material is and how it's routing and all that kind of stuff. I just will tell you that go talk to any ERP system, and they're going to talk to you about configurators. And it means it's their own database that's doing this stuff instead of receiving it really from the system. Now, what most of them would say is, oh, yeah, we can take the materials in, but the materials are only one element of it. And so now all of those things don't have to get set up in the system. You just get to use them and then to be able to do those functions. You'll also, for sure, probably want to do, time tracking and a number of those features, the actual transactions that are being made, for sure.
Hey, Sean, real quick, this is Jason again. So if I look at, this is kind of your Industry 4.0 deal, right?
Correct.
So if I'm thinking, so long-term foundation scalability, let's say that this data, however it's presented, let's say I put, for whatever reason, a monitor in my couple of final assembly cells, right? And does it have the capability, so barcodes enter into this and scanners enter into this, as they pull product through the shop, this dashboard, because of the way it calculates and how they finish a job out, does it have or will it have the capability at some point to provide a visual dashboard in, let's say, final assembly cells to check on?
I'm going to show you that in just a few minutes.
Okay.
I think you're gonna like it. It's just I didn't want to go too fast because the concept is radically different. People have thought about, well, estimation is estimation, engineering is engineering, ERP is ERP, and what we're trying to preach here is that if we come to the conclusion that this is the centralized data and use it both forward and back, it can be real powerful.
Well, I think everybody, on our side too, we need to understand what Industry 4.0 is, because that's really your strategy.
Yeah, it follows. If you guys have been studiers of the industrial revolutions, and we have seen what it is that this fourth industrial revolution, the Internet of Things, if we have seen that connecting data in ways that are different and more usable and less islands of information, all that kind of stuff is, really from the German government, and you can go read a lot of wiki kind of stuff about it, and it is super great principles, and we're living in it. However, for whatever reason, our industry might be a little bit slower or behind some of the other, industries that are out there. And so these are some new concepts. And so it's not that we invented so much something, but we applied it to wood and just said, how can our customers utilize this in the best way? So that's what I believe we've done.
So have you guys, in your endeavor in the wood side, because wood side is pretty antiquated and it's catching up with more of the sheet metal side of the business, have you guys invested in studies with some of the people that have adapted this into speed to market?
One of the things that I think that is a really interesting thing about the world of dealing with software and technologies is that, we could deliver WoodCAD CAM to you guys today, and for some companies, they're going to dig in and go and push and literally be, implemented in a short amount of time. For others, I mean, it's weeks and months and years for them to ever get even to a position. This literally, I think, becomes something that if you have a multi-year vision for the company and you can see where you want to go, it becomes more and more important to invest in this database and to be able to make it as absolutely as perfect and as useful and quick to be able to do as possible. And if you don't have this element, which you guys already do, that's the huge advantage, is that you guys already have a big jump start. So many of the companies that are coming to us saying, we want to understand how we can implement this Industry 4.0 principles into our business, they're using, software, a Microvolt, a CADivision, whatever, that's doing 50 or 60% of stuff. The rest is done in AutoCAD and CAM'd in some outside fashion. It's not contained in a database, and I believe anyway that it's possible to engineer 100% of what's going to go through the shop with the WoodCAD CAM technology.
Well, I mean, the benefit we have is we don't have any legacy data to convert, right? So all those other guys that have to work in there, and I've worked in different facilities, is the onboarding to take on a new theory is insanely expensive, and then it's at risk because you got to convert all that information into a system.
That's absolutely correct, and I can tell you from the on-screen takeoff portion of it, the total training to use the system completely, because we built all the databases and all the stuff to already work into it, is literally 2-3 hour sessions. So generally within the first day of having the program, you're already able to do some pretty, really nice takeoff kind of work for it. A little bit of integration to use the technology, the SXL technology that we've got behind the scenes to make this all connect and write to XML files within this, but it's a short deployment to be able to go ahead and make a step forward in your company to now extend backwards to takeoff and estimation. Then we work on how it is, because I don't know that you guys have Calculations Manager or maybe even understand fully what it's capable of doing, but some setup there to be able to get your factory and methodologies calculating the way that you want. But once you have that done, literally then every drop of information that you're going to need for ERP is done. So if you do choose an ERP, you spend your time setting up, your contacts and vendors and price breaks and all these kinds of things, all of your chart of accounts and that stuff, but you're not having to build into it any of the logic to do all the things that are already calculated. Hey, while I'm here, and I don't want to take you off topic, but Roger told me that he thought it would be a service to you guys if I showed you some of the features of version 12, that if you guys are on support, you get, automatically with the system. I had the pleasure of architecting WoodCAD CAM from when we joined forces with Stiles HOMAG right at the January of 2014. What we wanted in the first U.S. release, which is version 11, which you guys have, that I had, you can imagine, cast a vision for the very next things that I wanted the system to be able to deal with. and I think that you guys might agree that one area of what you could either call deficiency or you could say what we're able to do for you now is significantly better, is to have what I call a release manager. And a release manager literally allows you to have orders that have been set for in production so that if you try to access them from engineering, it flags you, which is one thing. But, you know, in WCAG CAME, you say, well, what do I want in an order? Because if I process, it processes the whole order. Well, I might want to be able to batch together multiple orders, but I might want to pick parts and pieces from multiples and have the system manage creating the launch and tracking what's been released and what hasn't. So just to show you how it works in this particular case, I think it would be good for us to be seeing just a few of the things that are available. So here's a button called Production Manager. By the way, you'd need the Sales Import Manager to do what I'm talking about with the on-screen takeoff, and you'll need the Production Manager, which is part of the version 12 side of things. Before I get started in working with this, there's a number of things that we can do. And so I'm just going to do this by creating a new project in this particular case, just so we have something to be working on. I'm just going to call this Alec. It's basically only a folder structure for housing multiple orders. So we'll see that we have this as a project now. And so a project can contain multiple things. Like if I said I wanted to make a new order underneath it, I'm just going to call it Order 1. Oops, already got that. Call that 101.
Hey, Sean, real quick, I know you're probably going to jump into the part of this is, so if I have one store I'm building or I have 4 stores I'm building of the same product, can I change the nesting strategy fairly easily in CutRight as it goes into WoodWop, I guess?
Yeah, you mean so that it would be receiving, I think just showing you this, I think will answer that question for you, and the answer is yes. And not only, yeah, I think it will be good. So I just wanted you to get this structure. So a project can have an order. You could create an order manually. You could add items to it if you wanted, you know, from its content. So if I wanted, I could add an article. Also don't know if you guys have been exposed to our XML technology for being able to have, you know, good-looking prompts and all that kind of stuff to any of the articles that you have within the system, but it makes it really amazing for being able to have a non-engineer be able to select and change what we think of as exposing the variables that you have related to the articles. And so you can manually add things in, or as you know, you can do that also from the, you know, the CAD side of things, so that you were drawing items in. But as you described before, if you had, you know, drink counter, whatever it is, already built into your system, somebody could literally come into here and go, I want 1, 2, 3 of these, whatever it is, and voila, you've got all those done without even doing a drawing in that case. I do have one order in here. What you do, if you're done with an order, is that you go to the head data and you click on the checkbox for in production and save. That's going to lock it on the engineering side because it's been marked for in production, and you'll see that it looks different by the icon of it. It has the little gears compared to other orders in the system. However, I'm just going to go grab a order that I want to be able to push into this. So I also give you the ability to take and drag and drop orders in. So different people could be working on different orders, and then they get accumulated together. Notice how the icon looks different of this to this. So I'm going to go into this and also say that I want to set it for in production. This doesn't mean that I've created any files. It's that I've prepared it so that if I wanted to, I could go to the production manager, and what we would see in the production manager is that I have the ability to create a new production order. That's different than a project and different than order. I'm going to call it today's production just as an example. So what might I want to launch out to, you know, CutRight as an example for that. So I have a production order. I can now look at the contents of it. what's going to show up at the bottom of your screen is all of the orders broken down by each item that have been set for in production but have not yet gone through the launch. So I can select some of them this way and say that I want to add these parts and all these pieces. Notice that I can even sort it by parts. It's not just a product, so I'm doing this by part name. I can have predefined filters. I can create my own filters for the way that I might want to be able to, sort things. So I could add a condition and say, hey, I want to, use this value and make it equal to this or greater than or whatever it is, so that you don't have to manually select them. But anyway, so I grabbed some of those. I could also come and sort some other way and say, hey, and I want to take, part of this order and I want to add these to it. So now in this upper section, I have all these things that are going to make up today's production. So literally from that, I can literally just say that I want to be able to save this. And as a result of doing so, whatever I put in this top container is now removed from the bottom container, so I no longer have to remember, oh yeah, in this one room they wanted us just to manufacture and install the uppers because there was some problem with the floor. I mean, it tracks everything for you. So from here we would have the ability to work with various outputs, and of course you can set these the way that you want. And so this is going to tell me that I want to process data transfer, create CAM, and I want to send the stuff out to Cut-Rite as a result of that. So literally I'll just select on this and say that I want to make this, and so now here are all the files that are created in order to be able to work within the system. So as an example, if I want to make a new production order for tomorrow, and I call this 819, and I say, here it is. When I look at its contents, it has nothing in it. However, all of these that were set for in production previously are now available. So just to clean my system out a little bit, I'm going to add all these to tomorrow's production. So they're there, and now you see that there's nothing else that's been set for in production that we haven't launched. Does that make sense?
Yep. Hey, Sean, I got a question. This is Jay. So let's say you process the order for 818 and you didn't quite finish everything that you had planned. Does it automatically move that over to 819, or how does that process work?
No, I used a date just to give you an example. This is about a batch.
Okay.
So in essence, if we thought about, because we mentioned Cut-Rite earlier, I'm going to pop it open just to give you an example. In Cut-Rite, what we would have now would be a file that has been created in order to work. So here is now a PNX file for 818. That's what I made. So now if we went through this, we could process and say that we have all of the items that were part of that in. And of course, as you guys know, you guys are doing some nesting with Cut-Rite or doing optimization, or both?
Both.
Very good. So in the info fields of WoodCAD CAM, I have the ability to write to Cut-Rite to tell it automatically the things that I want to go to the saw and to the router, so I don't have to do this manually, but just in case we don't know, I'll give you an example that we could set this and say, hey, we want to send these to nesting, and for whatever reason I want to make a change and send a few of these parts. I'm just going to take this and say I want to copy this, and so I'll take these and paste them in. So now I've got some things going to nesting, some things going to optimization. So I overrode it on the fly, but in essence, the reality is that the software could have already automatically told Cut-Rite the way we wanted to work. So here's the results for the saw. We didn't have very many parts in it. Or here's the results for routing as well. So everything that we needed done, the programs are created. This doesn't really have to do with did you make the right batch size or not. It's just allowing you to create a batch.
Okay, I get it.
I think me using the date for it, made you think that it was a day's production.
Right.
Even though the calculations manager can actually tell you that, so you could make logic into it. I was just using that as an example.
So,
Okay.
hey, Sean, real quick. So when I first came on board here, Marcelo here was telling me that, once we create all these bills of material, basically, it would also potentially shoot the POs out to the connected vendors. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
It is not. It doesn't have anything to do with vendor management. That is going to be a function of MRP, which is generally associated as a function of ERP unless you only have a specific MRP. And so there is no purchasing, receiving, anything else for that. However, you can have values set in this, and we can synchronize databases, right? Because who wants to put the value of materials that are constantly changing in multiple systems?
No, I'm with you. I was just trying to figure out that last portion of that 4.0. In other words, you have a bill of material, your vendors are connected, and then all of a sudden you select a vendor and it creates the order for you.
Absolutely. We do that in our visibility system. So we take all the data from this. It's calculated everything out that you need to purchase or relieve from inventory. And so then in the system, the function is we have lead times, we have whatever it is, and so it looks at your requirements and when you need to order, and you push a button and it generates POs out to the vendors. It actually, sometimes it's a multi-step process because in a lot of cases, because things are custom enough, for the non-negotiated items, we're sending out an RFQ. The vendor then can take that file, they can agree to the prices or delivery or whatever it is, press a button again, and now it's fed back into your system so that, it's electronic communication with your vendor so that you can see that, yep, they agree to this, and then you can issue the purchase order. Okay? So I see this as two sides. Number one, preparing for ERP, then ERP. And so in today's example, I don't think that we'll actually demonstrate the ERP side of it, but I think that we can effectively show you the takeoff, the estimation, the new in version 12, and then how we can help you get the production tracked, kitted, ship, all the kinds of things that we can manage from that data with our Production Coach MES system. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered, at least to a degree, what's new in version 12 related to the release management. Roger said that it would be good if we also gave you an example of some things that changed. One of the things that I had as a vision that we architected was what to do about field verification. And I've never seen a software get it right, but they nailed it in version 12. They totally got what we needed to do. Here is an example of an elevation. In this particular case, it happens to be 3 products, 2 two-door bases, 1 one-door base, and the one-door base is sandwiched in between. The reason that I did it that way is I think I can give you a couple of the examples of things that might be helpful. So first of all, what I want you to notice is that we have new buttons down here. I'm highlighting over in the bottom, quick insert mode. I'll show you that in a minute. And then we also have the article mode on and off. If I have the article mode on now, I can literally, without going to any commands, if I just click on something, it knows to select the whole article. Does that make sense? We now have these arrows, and I'll show you how to build those into your data. It's super easy. I've highlighted on the one on the right, and what that's given me is this little ball that we have here. Notice I can click to the center of it now, and I'm going to say 4 1/4 inches. So just by doing that, what I just told the system is that I needed that total elevation to change by 4 1/4 inches. So it calculated. So previously all the doors were symmetrical in size. Now they remain symmetrical because I changed the width of the products by a calculation from that 4 1/4 inches as a percentage of its width. So it did the calculations precisely. So that's how fast now that field verification can happen. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I want to do one more example. Let's say that this center one was an ADA sync base, so we wouldn't want it to change. I'm going to select just these two, tell it the arrow I want. I'm going to click this and say, hey, grow by 2 inches. And so now, literally, as a result of that, you're going to see that the products grow, but stay in relationship with each other so that they're not overlapping or anything else. So now it's done perfect. So it gives you incredible control for being able to deal with field verification. That make sense?
Uh-huh.
Yep. So quick insert mode works like this. Now, if I have an arrow highlighted, I literally could just come and select a product, and I don't even have to point it where I want it to go. So let's grab another one, whatever it is. So I can now build incredibly fast because it's smart. And of course, I could change the direction of it anytime that I wanted as well, and so then it would build it from the other side.
Nice.
Yeah, really, really nice. Okay, well, that was a couple of features. Roger, is there anything else you want me to dive into? I mean, it is a true thing. I think it's always good after we've used the software for a while to, kind of think about and to create a list of, hey, what is it that's taking us the most time? What kind of things do we struggle with? I believe that, most companies get to a certain point of, let's call it 60, 70% efficiency in technology, and then maybe they stop growing with it. And I believe that this technology is so powerful, there may be areas that are, uncovered at this moment.
Well, I think that they just recently bought an additional chair, which we're so busy that we try to. It got us our attention. It got them on our radar screen when they bought an additional seat of software, and we started asking questions. And then Alex went in there and visited with them, and lo and behold, these guys, as opposed to being relaxed, they're I got the impression that they're very aggressive about getting everything up and running as dynamic as they can. Therefore, we went ahead and showed them Production Coach, and then learned that they were doing the ERP deal, and I wanted to interrupt that to show them. My biggest concern is duplication of data. You're going to have data in WoodCAD CAM, which you're never going to get away from. If you have a traditional ERP system that ends up having the same data for estimating, that's disconnected from WoodCAD CAM. And with that sophisticated SQL database, not many people really know how sophisticated that is and what can be done with it. So that's why. So I think you've done a good job of showing them the data and what's available. And also now I think we need to show them what Production Coach can do for not a lot of money. It's not a very expensive process, but it leverages the heck out of the data coming out of WoodCAD CAM. So that's kind of where we're at now. I think they get it in terms of, they already have purchased the upgrade, so it's not really, we just need to time out when they're going to install it and the process of doing that.
But Roger, on that point, as far as data duplication, and I don't need to get into a long, drawn-out discussion, but are you telling us then that because of your association with visibility, you've now taken care of that issue?
The strategy is to use the data in WoodCAD CAM and have that be your data generator versus having a separate data generator. So yeah, I don't know how far along that project is. The last I checked, it was like 99% done. Sean, where is that project at?
Yeah, so the first thing that we had to do was to get an ERP company to understand our industry. There's some that certainly play in it, but they all think the same way because they're used to having every other industry to where the ERP system is the centralized source of data, the configurators and all that stuff. And so when we partnered up with Visibility, we had enough experience in the industry to be able to show them why their configurators or any other ERP's configurators were never going to be able to handle the level of data that was in it. So what they had to do, that we've tried to convince others that haven't followed along, is that instead of something having to begin as an item number or a already created in the ERP system, that they needed to develop a way to just be able to catch and manage the data that we have. So what we developed with them was a strategy that we pull from the WoodCAD-CAM database and create a file format that automatically creates things like estimates and sales orders. You know, it has all the lines, all the materials, all the routings, all those kinds of things, so that without any setup in the ERP system, you can already bring in, and it didn't have to do anything other than, okay, now I just received an estimate, and it's tied to this customer, and it's revised on this date, and I want these kind of terms, and you know, those kind of things, so that the CRM is managing it. And then, of course, because we already did all the calculations of BOM and cut list and that kind of stuff, then we can just convert that existing estimate to a sales order in the system, and to be able to drop it out into the schedule for, you know, rough scheduling of the overall project. And then as we make work orders, these production orders in WoodCAD-CAM, then those supersede the overall project and become finitely scheduled. But again, it's not like the ERP had to calculate anything. It just was able to receive the files.
Got it.
I'll tell you one little story that I had, because I was selling this company in Rhode Island, and they did high-end full-length face frame kitchens, and they were very good at it. They were about a $10 million business, and we calculated it would have taken 1,600 hours to set up their estimating data. And that just absolutely is just way too much. And then that data is separate from production data. And this is a big lesson. And they never did buy a system. They ended up just getting an accounting system. But they are a job shop company, and they were smart. And they discovered, hey, this is going to take a long time to set up. Well, you guys have that set up in WoodCAD-CAM, so you get to kind of shortcut the pain of a setup of an ERP system. There's still going to be pain, but it's going to be a lot less. Anyway, I'm sorry, I just needed to interject that.
Okay, so this interface is one of the interfaces of production coaches. What we basically did is we went out to the industry and we asked questions, said, you know, we've helped you manage the front office with estimation and engineering. What do you need in the back office, or what we might call the shop or the factory or those kind of things? And eventually it came down to some really, I think, important questions that we got great feedback from the industry on. You know, one of those questions was, you know, what's it cost you to be able to figure out where things are in production? And so they told us that kind of information. We said, you know, what happens if a part is broken? You know, what does it cost you to be able to, you know, not have a good way to manage broken parts and decision processes and those kind of things? You know, what happens when the shop doesn't have enough information and they got to come into the office and interrupt the engineer who's working on something else and to give them an answer and, you know, get back into what they're doing and those kind of things? You know, what's it cost to, you know, start to assemble something and find out that not all the parts are available for it? What's it cost, you know, to make a shipment and just to get a call from installation or whatever it is that things were missing? And so those were the things that we attempted to solve. Oh, and the other one was all the shop paperwork. My gosh, the amount and time of printing and all that kind of stuff is just pretty interesting. So that's what we attempted to solve, and Roger's very accurate in describing that this system works along with or sits underneath an ERP, but no ERP has the ability to do the things that this can do at the level it can, and it's reading directly the WoodCAD-CAM database. So on the left-hand side, I'm just highlighted on what's called a work order, production order, whatever you want to do that. We can see the items that are available within this, so it's got some different kind of things. You can separate out, if you want, through the configuration, the items that you guys might consider to be loose items, moldings, kick plate, items or whatever it is that don't get attached to the cabinet, so that those can become kits and printed and all kinds of things there. I'll deal with that in a minute. So I just want you to see, if you have it done, the first thing that we could see is its production status, because now we have something that hasn't even been worked on. It hasn't made it through cutting, kitting, assembly, staging, shipping, or whatever stations that you might have set up. So there's nothing on it. However, if we looked at another system, let's see if I have anything. I just imported a new database. So, okay, so this one has some things. If we look at this one, we'll see that it's made it all the way through cutting. It's made it through kitting. It's partially through assembly. We can see the overall work order. So the status can be a really nice way at any moment to be able to see something. The second side that we have for this is that we can also see and make available to the shop. Here are all of the hardware items and quantities that we're going to need. So instead of having to give them all kinds of reports and whatever, man, they can just go grab this kind of stuff wherever they need, as well as the sub-assemblies that are available for this system. You'll notice that the status of all of these is ready for production, so nothing's happened to it yet. There was a mention earlier of barcodes, and so I'm going to go get a barcode. Hear me scan a barcode. The first thing that I want to show you is what's called visualization. Let's just say that for whatever reason, someone in the shop has a part and they don't know if it's right, they don't know where it goes, or they need to report damage or whatever it is. They can literally just wand a barcode. It's going to automatically find the order that it's related to, the product that it's related to, and the part that it's related to. So now I'm displaying that right side, and so now I can see where it goes in the assembly, any kind of information about it. I also read the WoodCAD-CAM database, so if I click into the picture, I could now see all of the machining and stuff that was supposed to happen to that part. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Imagine that you were going to assemble a custom fixture that had, 100 parts, and you just didn't even know how it was going to go together or anything else. You could literally click on a part and be able to see all this stuff directly on the shop floor. If this part was damaged, for example, I could click on it and tell it a reason why it got damaged, and you'll notice in the bottom right hand of my screen this damaged part alert comes up. So that could have automatically went to someone, production manager, back office, whatever it is, that is able to make a decision now on the fly about whether this damaged part should be remade, whether it should be back ordered, whatever it is. I'm going to click on this and manage it and say, hey, from the office, I'm making a decision that the part has been fixed or has been sent back through. So that gives me a real nice way. I also give you the ability here to be able to hide things. Like if I wanted to hide that front, and if I wanted to be able to take this view and to be able to, rotate it around or whatever. So it really gives me, as someone in production, a great tool to be able to know the level of data that I have of anything. Notice the bottom side of this also tells me, hey, here's all the hardware that you need for this one item. That makes sense?
Yes.
Pretty cool. So you can imagine being able to generate, the images and all that kind of stuff on the fly from the WoodCAD-CAM data really separates this from anything else being able to work. You can change the status of something just by clicking on it and working with it. However, you can also scan a product label configured at a station to automatically change the status. You can also do multi-selective things. So in this case, we're just going to say that I want to take all of these items, and I'm going to tell these that I want to change their status. So I could say, hey, I want a status of cut, and so now they all become that kind of a thing.
Hey, Sean, real quick. So if I let's say I put some stations on the floor that this could take place, do those stations run off a cloud server or whatever, or do I have to buy their licenses for each station?
You have a license for each station.
Okay.
Yep. So in this example, before we go too much further, I want to show you two things. Number one, in the process of doing this, if I clicked on reports, we would see things like, let's imagine that I'm at shipping and I want to make sure that I have everything scanned onto the truck. Well, at this stage, there is nothing that has made it through that status point, so it would tell me 0 of whatever this number of items. However, if we move this along, so it's flagging me in red so I don't miss things. It's telling me how many items would be back ordered. So if we then, of course, change the status, and I'll come back and do that in a minute, to ship, then we get to see. So we get electronic verification of everything that's made it onto the truck, and that's really an important thing. I'm going to log out of this for just a moment and log back in as a different type of station. There's an element of this that I think is pretty interesting to see. This is what I call my sorting station. And so as how do I say this? As parts are coming off of the line, they are generally not yet sorted by product, and someone has to figure out what it is that they can be ready to assemble. If you'll notice the coding for this in the rack number 13, and you can design your rack however you want, it has some parts in it. So it has 5 parts of 9. In rack 1 has 8 parts of 8. So if you were on the back side of this, you would know that you would never pull from bin 13, but you would pull from bin 1. So just to show you how this works, I have the part labels, the barcodes for products from the 004. I'm going to scan, scan, scan. So it's telling him what rack to be able to put it in. So it could be from multiple products. I just don't want to take all day scanning. So you'll see that I've now scanned 9 of 10, and when I scan 10 of 10, now I see that. And if I was on the reverse side of this, the guy in assembly getting ready to pull from one of these to decide what to do, I now see that both racks 1 and 2 have all their parts available. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And again, this is completely configurable, can work with mobile cards, can do whatever it is that you need. You can even tie multiple racks together. Have you guys ever been to the Stiles, North Carolina facility?
I have not, but I think Marcelo went to Stiles, North Carolina, didn't he?
Yeah, we have this set up and running in their facility, but they have a logic that they have one rack for cabinet parts, and then they have a different storage area for drawers and doors. So on this reverse side, it could still show up as not all the parts available until another rack had scanned in those doors and drawers. Then it turns green on this side. So you never start to assemble something and parts aren't ready. So anyway, just a quick example of what you can do there. I want to go back to the office for just a moment, and we're going to change the status of where we are with this order. And again, we could be scanning these things to automatically happen, but just to be able to show you, I'm going to change these now to shipped. And so now that means that the barcodes of the product label have been done. If you do storage before shipment and put products on kits, you can also say, hey, you know what, I want to take these items. I can take, sorry, clicked in the wrong area. I want to take these items and I want to make them part of a kit. We'll tell this that we want it to be part of kit 1. And so if I printed the label for this now, let's say that I put them on a pallet, and now I want to be able to do that. Here it is. We just automatically generated on the fly the label for this. So that means after I've shrink wrapped, I stick this label on. So when we actually ship, the shipper only has to scan that one barcode, which verifies that all of these products made it on the truck as well. So if we're back out here, oops, I just opened up another version. So now if I look at my shipping report, because these have all been scanned onto the truck, now I have the verification that all of these items have been shipped. Takes just a moment for this to fire up on my side with the go to meeting stuff, but report will be there in a second. So now we can see that we shipped everything that we were supposed to, including including loose items, kits, the whole thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So this is really, instead of you must do these things, it allows you to determine where you might want stations, what functions you want those stations to do. It's just giving you the management of those. And so now, if we looked at this and said, what's the completion of this order? We know that it's 100% done. There's nothing damaged or back ordered still to be able to deal with. It moved it into an area of completed work orders. It just works fantastic.
What if you have parts that you're shipping that aren't made? They're buyouts or whatever.
Yeah, so those come in as a kitted item. If you'll notice, I set my system up. This is an order from WoodCAD-CAM 6/9/2016, whatever it is, 6/9/2016, and we can go look at that order in the system. But what I did is I made a filter in my system and said there are certain kinds of items that are going to come from the WoodCAD-CAM database that are either going to be not assembled on the cabinets or they're not manufactured. So in this case, I have them as kick plates, and so I made these a kit to be able to work with. And so that is easily configurable in the system so that we can read from the database and to be able to know the things that we want to do. Just to, if you wanted to see the thing for that, I think I can show you. Second. Import setting stations, reasoning, sorting racks. Anyway, I'll have to dig in to tell you where
Okay.
it is. General. Okay, so here's the area for detached options. So I'm able to use a wildcard on either side of whatever name we want. And so it's reading the database. And in my case, I just made one called filler and one called kick plate. So if it sees those things come across, to just be strategic in the way that you name buyout items so that there's some way for it to pick up and automatically know that it becomes a detached item, a loose item, instead of something that's part of an assembly. So really easy to be able to use the WoodCAD-CAM data to now extend forward to help production, to reduce the paperwork, to improve the amount of information, to, the whole communication thing changes very drastically.
John, he was wanting to see the dashboard too.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, so if you click on the button for the dashboard, what you get to see is the business intelligence side of this, and you can configure in a variety of different ways, select different date ranges, just a number of things about it. So what it can tell you is literally where you could be expecting bottlenecks and those kind of things. So the office has produced in this period of time 34 items, and only 12 have made it through this process for cutting, so that means we got 22 left to do at cutting. We've only done 15 at kitting, so that means, so it means we got 7 left in balance, and so it can be looking over multiple orders and to be able to see the performance of where we are. Not only is there this dashboard, but one other that I think answers possibly his question maybe even better, is that if we were looking out here, we could literally look at the performance. And so now we could see for a particular time frame, let me go back here to find, oh, I'm sorry, I just deleted that stupid order because I was going to re-import this. But here we go. If we're looking at this from this standpoint, this hasn't been done today. That's my problem. So what I'm going to do is, let me take this and bring this 004 in. There you are. I delete it out every time because I only have one set of printed barcodes. As you can imagine, I can't print from the screen's display of a barcode, so it makes it a nice way. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to change this status of these to shipped, so not all of them are. And so now if we looked at our performance, we would see that we could have a running total of, how many kits have been done, how many products have been done. It could literally be a nice visual display, and this can be broken up into quarters of a day or however it is that you want to keep people on the pace of how much production is being done. Does that make sense? You still with me?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so this was kind of what I had in mind to show you guys today. Is there anything else we want to see, know, discuss? Sometimes when you're viewing stuff for the very first time, it's kind of hard to take it all in or know what else to ask. But if anything else, I think we've communicated, hopefully, that we took the WoodCAD CAM data. We've made improvements in version 12 to help you do even better. We've extended it backwards to the pre-sale process of takeoff and estimation. We've extended it forward to be able to help you with these MES functions of managing production and the communication with engineering. And then that's a natural to extend even further forward to MRP and scheduling, capacity planning, and of course accounting functions.
So is the link between this and the ERP, is it two-way?
It is not.
So we're entering maybe raw material in two different areas.
So we have to decide where it is that we're going to put things in, and our belief is that while there could be potentially a backwards flush, the intent would be that WoodCAD CAM is calculating, is where you're creating new materials, and those then appear within the ERP system.
Okay.
For sure, we can agree that they have to be in WoodCAD CAM, right? And if they have to be in WoodCAD CAM, you're realistically beginning to work on an estimate or an order before the ERP has it. So our belief is that is where the materials are created, and then they become new materials in the ERP system.
So what about client name or vendor name?
Yeah, all of that ERP system not in WoodCAD CAM.
Okay, so when we have a work order in WoodCAD CAM, it's not, we don't see that it's tied to a client?
You can absolutely enter in. There's values and places that you can have. If we were looking at any kind of let's go out of this. If we were looking at any kind of an order, it has head data for it, and if you want in the head data, you could have who's the client and different kind of stuff for it. Here's customer data, but this is not a CRM system, and that the ERP is going to be much better for it. So I'm going to suggest here that we have a light amount of data that is coming into this. The link being created, I'm so sorry, I gave you a wrong answer here. So what's going to happen is this. When we take the data that goes from WoodCAD CAM, it's going to, at one time, write to the ERP system, and then in that there will be a interim, like you're going to select things like as long as they exist in the ERP, you'll be able to select, architect, contractor, project manager, those kinds of things in this interface. Then it's going to write the project to the ERP system, and it's going to write back to the WoodCAD CAM database all of this customer data and the head data for the other items. There are these info fields that basically 1 through 5 we're typically using, and so then they'll post in custom info fields 6 through 15.
Yeah, I guess that's going to have to be part 2, understanding how that whole connection between the two works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my thought on it is to get their data refined and ready. And while we're doing that, explore and communicate the nuts and bolts of the systems working together and how the data flows. It certainly is not a simple, easy thing to explain and map out.
Sure.
But logic tells me you don't want to have the same data in two different places in the organization, because now you got twice the amount of maintenance, and it's hard to keep them it's hard to keep that synced. And then the other thing is let's get as much juice out of the SQL database that's already on campus, both from estimating and in production as we move forward. The production coach part of this is going to be needed even with the ERP system. It's ERP systems don't think in terms of kitting and doing the details and broken parts and managing broken parts and making sure the trucks are full and showing teamwork, what's done on the shift. They're not as good as that. They tend to come from the accounting office and work their way backwards. So as a consequence, I've asked our suppliers to give me the list of people that I bought production codes that already have an ERP system. So that's coming at me. So anyway, by the way, I've recorded this session. I think, Sean, are we done with the Tech Talk?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and I will publish this and send it to each one of you guys.